their prerogative.
You went on to say about authority over women. If I have a responsibility over her, I must have a degree of authority.
Yeah.
For the same reason, if I have responsibility over and people are going to use their mind, it's an example, an analogy, responsibility over a child, I have to have some authority.
Yeah.
So you believe as part of your ownership or your property of the woman, you have authority over her.
No, I believe if you have...
That's what you said.
I believe if you have responsibility over something, you have to have a degree of authority or you can't be responsible.
Yeah, but authority means, again, that you're the boss.
The point I'm making, if you'll please let me finish
Sure.
at this point, the point I was trying to make was talking about the safety of a woman. She was walking alone at night, and I was saying, well, I wouldn't let my woman walk alone at night. And they said, well, you're not in charge of her. You don't get to decide what she does. I said, I understand, but if I'm responsible for her safety, and I'm the person who's burdened with making sure she is safe, I have to have the authority to say, don't put yourself in unsafe situations. The two things are linked.
Well, you don't have authority. You have you can absolutely have the right to say to the woman you're with, I don't think you should, but ultimately...
If she decides, then I can't force her.
Right, so authority implies that you have the ability to control someone.
No, authority implies that I have the moral right to sit and say that that's an irresponsible thing to do, and I'm responsible for
That's not what...
Okay, let's define authority, because once again, we going on the semantic argument, we getting hung up on words. So, the authority, the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. Okay, I'm even hung up on the word, because I don't necessarily see it as like, when we think of authoritative figures, we think of like dictators. I think like, because you have the standing of like, perfect example. You have authority as a husband that a normal man does not have over his wife. You have authority as a wife over your husband that any other woman on the street doesn't have, because you guys have something that is that basically regulates your relationship. So yeah, I think there is a level of authority that you both have. However, you would hope in a proper marriage that if you speak in this authority, in this role that you're in towards your partner, whether you be man or woman, they will want to conceive and to listen to you and, to lack of a better term, be obedient and obey you, because you're coming from a place of love. Now, granted, I know that's not how all relationships are, but how it should be is like, hey, as your wife, I'm telling you this because I care, and because I have in my role, I have a level of authority to tell you, hey, babe, this probably isn't best. Versus like Susan down the street. She has no level of authority, no pull in the relationship whatsoever, unless you're sleeping with her. But that's a whole nother thing.
Authority means.
Well, I'm not going to, if you think I'm going to lock somebody up in their room, is that what you're implying?
No, I don't think you know what authority means.
I know what it means. I'm saying that if I...
Just a different description of what authority means.
If I have responsibility for her safety, then I have to have the authority to tell her not to do unsafe things.
Yeah, but authority means that you have some form of control over this woman.
I think what you're trying to do...
I'm only trying to get to what you think. Honestly, I am. I come with no agenda here at all.
I understand. And I'm explaining very, very clearly. If I have responsibility over said subject, I have to have authority of it. So let me say you have children, right?
Right.
You have responsibility for them.
No, I have legal authority over my children. That is very different to having legal authority over my wife or my female partner.
Completely, but the point I'm trying to make...
So you accept that?
I accept that
Because you used the analogy of responsibility for a child.
My friend, these are very...
These are actually really important things.
They're important things, but you interrupt me every 5 seconds, so it's hard for me to actually explain my point.
Oh, wow.
The point I'm making here is very simple. You have children, and you're responsible for their safety, so you're going to have authority to say, don't go out at night, perhaps, because you want them to be safe.
I have legal authority.
You have a legal authority.
Yeah.
Legal authority. I'm saying that if I had a woman, and the question where you've raised this soundbite from, I was asked about protecting a woman, making sure she's safe. And I would say I wouldn't want her to go out at night on her own because I'm responsible for her safety. And someone said, well, you don't have authority over her to do that. And I said, well, no, I can't force her to stay inside. But if she were to ask me, how do I protect myself at night? I would say, well, you should stay inside. That's how you should do it.
I don't have an issue with what
So
you
we agree.
said. No.
It's the semantics.
No, it's not semantics. And this is where I don't think you quite get why there's a furore over what you say, with respect. Because the semantics point would be if we're saying the same thing in different ways, but we're not. I'm saying to you that when you say I have to have some authority over a woman, I say to you, you have no right to any authority over a woman. You do over a child if it's your child, because you are the legal appointed guardian of that child.
Understood.
You're not a legally appointed...
Legal or not, if that's your child and you love them, whether the law says it or not, like, you should have their best interest and mind involved. So whether the law tells you you have to supply for your kid, if you're a decent parent, you're going to want to do at least a bare minimum, make sure that they eat and they have clothes on their back, whether the government is telling you to do it or not. So I think legal arguments should be thrown out here. Once again, I'm also coming from a place of like how marriage should be. I understand that it's not like that for all people. It's not like that for all men. It's not like that for all women. But if we could all go down to the basic level of how we all think marriages should be, I would say that, yeah, whether legal or not, you want to make sure that they're taking care of the person who you claim to love. And if you claim to love them, I'm not going to tell my boyfriend to just go out and run into a minefield. I'm like, babe, as your girlfriend and as, God forbid we're married, as your wife, I'm telling you, this is a minefield. Do not run out into this minefield because I love you and I don't want you to die. So for your safety and for my lack of stress and I don't want to lose you, don't run out into this minefield. I have siblings. Anytime I want to go out at night, my mom will always make me take my brothers. And she always said that, hey, if anything were to go down, at least you have somebody with you. She has a legal obligation to me, but she also has a legal obligation to my brother, but simultaneously recognizes that even though you're 16 and you want to do things by yourself, I recognize that you live in a dangerous world and you should probably take somebody with you. 2 is better than 1. If you can't scrap somebody by yourself and necessarily win, but if 2 of you are at it, y'all might have a fighting chance. So legally or not, it's like, because I love you, I'm going to make sure that I do my due diligence. So I'm giving Tate the W for this one. Piers is just arguing semantics at this point. Personally, I think that's a invalid argument.
Appointed guardian or authority over your wife or female partner.
Legally appointed, absolutely not. I agree. However, when it comes to things like personal responsibility or personal safety, men, largely by society, are accepted. We're the protectors and providers. We can sit here and pretend that in the world we live in, if me and my wife were walking down the street and men were to come up and try and attack us, I wouldn't be the one fighting. But we both know in reality I would.
Right.
I have a degree of responsibility to protect her. So if I have a degree of responsibility to protect her physically, then the point I'm trying to make is I will do my best to make sure she's never putting herself in unsafe situations.
Do you wish you hadn't used the word authority?
The authority is something that she would give to me. She would come to me and say, how can I make sure I'm as safe as possible?
But I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to point out that's not what authority means.
If someone gives, a person can give
voluntary authority is not authority.
No, but that's the point.
It's not.
Piers.
Andrew, it's not.
Piers, if a woman comes to me and says, I want you to keep me safe, she is handing me authority for her safety.
But do you understand the difference between having authority over somebody and somebody giving you permission to have authority?
Completely. I never said
one is consensual and one isn't.
But why are we pretending I do unconsensual things?
Because you literally say, I must have a degree of authority. I have to have some authority. And the point about
only if I'm responsible for her safety. If I'm not responsible for her safety, I don't have authority.
If your position now is that with her permission, I would like to have authority when we go out at night to protect her, that's a different thing.
That was always my position.
But that's not what you said.
But that was always my position.
So again, I simply say to you,
It is what I said, though.
Do you wish you'd phrased it a different way?
No, because we're talking about long format copy where I'm talking about a woman who has come to me and said, you're responsible for making sure I'm safe. I said, well, then I have to make the decisions.
When an 18-year-old boy reads, I must have some authority over a woman, what do you think he thinks?
Well, I understand that. And I said this earlier when you tried to say I was backtracking, which I'm not doing.
No, actually, I'm not. I don't want to. Okay. I'm not trying to gotcha you.
Cool.
I'm trying to work out exactly what you actually
I understand
think.
With massive fame comes massive responsibility. I understand that a percentage of the population are always going to take everything that's said by anybody out of context.
Would you change the wording of what you said?
No, I would just encourage people to watch my long format copy and understand it fully.
Would you tell an 18-year-old boy you don't have authority over women?
Absolutely.
You would say that?
Unless a woman comes to him and says, you're responsible for my safety, please make sure, keep me safe. Like my woman says,
that Andrew Tate, I can sign up to.
Well, then we agree.
Yeah, but I don't agree with what you said before.
Because you're taking a sound from a 2-hour
Yeah, but you haven't been taken out of context because I read you the entire sentence.
But you've ignored all the context around the sentence, my friend.
You can't ignore a sentence that says, I must have a degree of authority.
But you can when there's a 2-hour conversation where a woman is telling me if she...
You have a book. If you take a book and only read one sentence out of the book, you don't have the context of the book. You have the one sentence. So read the book. That seems very logical to me. I can see why my brother was mad. Yo, like we're running around in circles here. We're just circular reasoning at this point.
makes me responsible for her safety, and me explaining, well, if I'm responsible for your safety, I have the authority to make decisions. So yes, you've ignored all the context.
Do you respect women?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
Do you think that 18, 19-year-old women are more attractive than 25-year-old women?
I think there's attractive people. That's a loaded question. I don't know.
Well, it's not really, is it?
I can't.
You know why I'm asking?
Yeah, it is.
Of course I do, but I can't sit here and
say.
For
the benefit of viewers who don't know why I'm asking, you said this. In general, this is also one of the reasons men find youth attractive. You want to blow up the internet? I'll blow up the internet right effing now. The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. People say, oh, you can't say that, but yes, I can. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up. That is misogyny.
Why?
Because you are encouraging a mindset about 25-year-old women that makes them sound out to be infinitely less desirable than 18, 19-year-olds and having effectively been having too much sex to be taken in a more respectful way.
Well, firstly, even if that was the case, that wouldn't be misogyny.
But what did you mean by what you said?
That's not misogyny because it's not anti-women. I'm saying that an 18 or a 19-year-old woman would be more desirable.
Pretty anti-25-year-old women.
Anti-25-year-old women, we can argue,
Ageist.
but not misogyny.
Well, that's misogyny then, isn't it?
No,
it's ageist.
Being anti any woman at all is misogyny.
Not when I'm
ageist.
saying that women are beautiful and attractive at a certain age and saying that ageist.
You're saying 18, 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25.
Well, then ageist perhaps, but misogynistic absolutely not.
But you just accepted it was misogyny.
No, I didn't. You said it was misogyny. I'm telling you, no, it's not.
So you don't think if you're saying slightly hateful things about a 25-year-old...
That's not slightly hateful.
Well, it is. Think you say that to...
I hear this all the time from men, and it's not that you lose your attractiveness, but it's the it's like anything, really. When life gets to you at a certain age, and I'm just saying life in general, it starts to wear on your body. It starts to, you see people who, when you take care of yourself, and we'll just say even, from a healthy standpoint, right? When you take care of yourself, at 50, you might be way more attractive than someone who's 25 and who doesn't take care of themselves, doesn't work out, eats a lot of junk food. You might have more attractive qualities, you might be a good person, but physically attractiveness, if we're comparing the two, it's like the 50-year-old might be more physically attractive than the dude who's in his 20s who's overweight. There's a level of innocence that a person has when they're that young because you haven't had a lot of experience that I think a lot of dudes like. I understand what he's saying. I don't think it's misogynist. I think it's ageist.
For a woman's face if she's 25?
It's not slightly hateful.
So you would go up to a 25-year-old woman and tell her exactly what I've just read out.
Why would I walk up to a random 25-year-old woman?
Because you said it in public on the internet, and it's been listened to and watched by millions and millions of young, impressionable boys.
Correct. There was a large panel. There was a conversation. There was hours long of conversation. There were feminists attacking men for toxic masculinity and attacking me and saying things. And I said things back which were going to antagonize them. Which you've done yourself a bunch of times.
I think a lot of allegations of toxic masculinity are not toxic.
Correct.
I do think that kind of sentence that I just read out, that paragraph, is actually toxic. If you genuinely mean that, and you say you wouldn't say it to a woman's face, but you said it in public about women of that age, I do think that's misogynist. And I think you probably do too.
I don't think it's misogynistic. I understand why it can be insulting.
You wouldn't say it to a woman's face?
Well, it depends. You're making out like I'm walking around the street going up to random 25-year-olds.
Well, effectively, you're doing it to tens of millions of people online. There's no difference.
Not at all. We're discussing a topic. We were discussing the ideal age of a man.
Should young boys, right, in their teens, are you comfortable that they would have that mind?
I had a video that I did with my dad on this channel, and I told my dad, even from because he's talking about from a female perspective, I was asking my dad if I was dating a guy who had an exorbitant amount of bodies, we'll call them. He said that unless he hasn't had some epiphany, I'm getting the shotgun, basically. Because for him, it's like, why have you gotten to this point of sleeping with this many people? And what have you taken from every single relationship to get to this point to now you're even considering dating my daughter? And my mindset growing up has always been that when I'm dating with intention. I'm dating for marriage. So it's like, okay, you're saying that you want to marry my daughter. Okay. But you have 5, 6, 10 plus bodies in your resume, how do I know that you're going to be someone who he's like, because either people didn't love you or you're not a lovable person. Like, even to get to that point, you have to be very deceptive, very conniving as a man, just to get to that point. So it's like, okay, you're talking about seriously settling down with my daughter. I'm looking at you very funny. And as a man, you're going to have to go man to man with me and explain this scenario and the situation to even make me think about considering this being a good match for you and my daughter.
Insane. Be honest.
I think that young boys in their teens lack life experience. They lack nuance. And they need to be very, very careful what they're digesting online, whether it's my content or anybody else's.
I think you know for a fact millions of them are digesting exactly what you're saying.
Completely. The entire internet, to a degree. I think any subject you can find, there's going to be a whole heap of content.
I come back to the Joe Rogan thing, Andrew. Is that a lot of what you say, I agree with.
Yeah.
Right? I do, genuinely. I've written a lot of stuff you said. A lot of the stuff you talk about, I think, yeah, he's got a good point, right? So we agree about a lot of things. But when I read that kind of thing, I'm like, how much of that is you? How much of that is some act? Do you regret saying stuff like this?
I don't.
And actually, do you see it as weakness to admit you shouldn't have said something like that?
No, I don't live with regret. I think what's happened is that, like I said, long format content, arguments with feminists, arguments with the toxic masculine crowd, arguments with the left, and they're going to take a small clip, small sentence from ours, and they're going to try and paint me as a villain.
But I'm not left or right.
I don't know what you are, Piers.
Exactly. That's my point. That's my point.
And I understand. And you're doing exactly as I knew would happen on this interview, which is because you're a busy man. You're not going to watch hours and hours and hours of video.
Actually, I have watched hours and hours of video, and I'm going to come to the stuff where I agree with you, and I'm going to come to the stuff about your censorship, which
Sure.
I have issues with. So this is, it's a long interview, right?
Sure.
I just thought off the top, you said to me, and you were quite bold about it, well, go on, then let's go through these.
And you should keep going. I will sit here and stand by what I said. I believe that
on that, I just read to you then.
Yeah.
Do you wish you hadn't said that?
I understand how it's been misconstrued. I understand how it's been weaponized against me. Do I regret it because it's been weaponized and used against me? Well, that's slightly annoying.
That's not why I want you to
Did I
regret
at the time mean what I said in the context of the conversation, which obviously you're not familiar with and the people at home are not familiar with? No, I meant what I said.
The 25-year-old women, they've just talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up.
Well, there's a whole bunch of context and conversation around that's been missed, and I
don't think I'm missing much context.
Well, I encourage people who are interested to go watch it.
Right, but I mean, I've just read out 3 sentences on the bounce there. I don't think there's any context I'm missing. I mean, you've made it pretty clear what you think about the difference between 18 and 90-year-old women.
I wasn't talking about myself, even. I was talking with a Muslim guy who was on the panel, and he was explaining how youth is very valued in most parts of the world, and why virginity is valued in most parts of the world. The feminists were arguing against it, and I was sitting there, actually very much like you, a mediator between the two, explaining why in most of the world still today, perhaps not in the Western world, virginity is coveted, youth is coveted in most of the world, and throughout all of human history. And I was sitting there making the point, explaining why in certain parts of the world they think how they do,
well, even though
it's very different to the Western world. So I was making a point, mediating between two groups very similar to yourself. The conversation has been misunderstood. They've taken this clip of it and it's being weaponized and used against me. I understand that is because I am now the most famous Google person on the planet. It's inconvenient, sure, but I'm definitely not a danger to women in any regard. I date women 25, 26, 27 years old all the time. None of them are offended by the things
I don't think you're a danger to women.
I
think the danger, if it concerns you, the danger is the influence you have on young men to have this kind of mindset about women.
Thoughts so far? I agree with Andrew, man. Okay, so this is where I say that I've seen some Andrew Tate clips that I don't agree with, where he's like, depression is basically non-existent. I think that it does actually exist. I think he's making a lot of valid points. Piers is not allowing him to speak, which is kind of annoying. Also, kind of annoying. I feel like we're having we keep saying it. It's all about semantics, man. When he said his sister is his property, I'm like, not gonna lie, like, you're gonna have to explain yourself. Like, what do you mean by that? Then when he says, like, well, husband hands off, or a father hands off his daughter to her husband. She takes his last name. I'm not opposed to that as a way of like explaining himself. I feel like that makes sense to me. When it comes to the ageist argument, some people want to be like, well, now he hates 25-year-old women. He hates women. I'm like, no, that's an age argument, number one. Number two, that goes to both ways for both men and women. Like, you know, I've only dated 2 guys in my life, and the first guy I ever dated, he had a lot of partners. How he treated our relationship was based on his relationships with his previous girlfriends. Certain things like leaving his GPS on so he knew that I knew where he was at all times. I thought it was kind of dumb, but for him, when he explained it, he was like, well, my girlfriends in the past always wanted to know where I was so they didn't think I was cheating on them. For me, I'm just like, if you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat. I'm a grown person with a job. I don't have the ability, the time, and the capabilities to want to know where you are at all times of the day. So put that in a female's body. You're very distrusting. You don't trust your man. He can have his GPS on, but that's not enough. You want to know where all of his friends are at a given time. You want him to be home by a certain time. Like, all this stuff. It can become a huge thing. So from that argument, I understand. Once again, so far I'm giving Andrew the W. Piers, I would appreciate it if he didn't talk as much. He was not this chatty with the Jordan Peterson interview. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below. Also, leave some comments down there. I definitely want to have a conversation with you guys on this. Do you guys agree with Andrew? Do you guys disagree with Andrew? Is he misunderstood, or is he actually just a misogynistic jerk? Let me know, and make sure you subscribe for future videos. Love y'all, kinfolk. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.